Welcome to the Pro-Life Perspective. I'm Abigail Lorenzen, and this is the podcast of Right to Life of Northeast Indiana. Today we have Pastor Shawn Barnett joining us. Hello, Pastor.
Hello.
How are you?
Doing well.
I'm glad to have you in here. Pastor is the associate pastor at Redeemer Lutheran Church in Fort Wayne. And I'm excited to have some conversations with you. We're talking about abstinence today. That is abstinence from sex until marriage. So welcome to the Pro-Life Perspective.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I think we should start with God's design. I feel like that's a good place to start, generally speaking. And when we're talking about abstinence, this is a bone I have to pick right away, Pastor Barnett, is that people say abstinence. Okay, well, abstinence just means restraining yourself from, not doing. Mm-hmm. So abstinence about what, from what, and till when, right?
Right.
But the phrase gets so long. Abstinence from sex till marriage. It's like this long. So, okay, for the purpose of the podcast, it'll just be abstinence. And God designed this. And I think when we look at our culture, people are so fast to say, oh, kids these days, they're just having sex, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And there's nothing we can do about it. So why are we even talking about it? And I think we see this reflected when we're looking at like sex ed curriculums. So Indiana has an abstinence only law that's the curriculum that's taught in Indiana is sex ed from the abstinence perspective. Yeah. And a lot of people they ridicule that tactic because they're like, well, kids are going to have sex anyways. So you need to teach them how to do it safely instead of trying to teach them not to do it until they're married. So we're sort of coming into this conversation as the underdog a little bit, I think. But that's why I like to start, especially for the Christian audience, of like, what is God's design? But then for the non-Christian audience, we're also going to hit on how the natural world backs up the logic of God's design. So not only is it what God says, but it makes sense to do it this way. No matter what your worldview is, you gain from following these steps, these directions, this path. So where would you like to start?
All right.
Pastor
Well, let's
Barnett?
I'd like to back up and we'll get to the God's design. I want to talk about the word abstinence a little bit.
Okay. Yeah.
Let's start with that and then we'll go to God's design and then go to a few other places. I think it's a good place to start, abstinence, and I'm glad that I wasn't aware that we had abstinence only education in Indiana, and I think that's something to be cheered on. That is a great thing, even though, of course, it meets with opposition. I think there's a word that's probably even better than abstinence, and that's chastity.
Yes. Which is one that nobody talks about anymore.
It is a virtue, right? And because you're right, abstinence is just don't do this.
Right.
Right? It's just a negative. It doesn't really assert anything about
it's a limit.
Right. It doesn't. And I don't always think, especially with children and teenagers, that you don't just want to give them a negative.
Right.
You want to give them a positive, which is why I think it's important that you brought up God's creation and where this is going, right? Mm-hmm. So this until marriage thing is just kind of a floating question. That everyone seems to have assumed, maybe not, but seems to me people in our culture for a long time assumed that's just going to happen.
Like everybody's just going to get married?
People are going to get married eventually once they figure everything else out, and then we just, even among kind of the conservative Christians, there's this desire. Well, we want our children to abstain from sex because we know that it does exist within God's design of marriage. And we want them to have a wholesome marriage. So we're going to tell them, don't do this. Yeah. And that's good. But I think that it is more helpful to have a positive vision of what you're going toward.
Yeah.
And also kind of some thought and talk about how to get there. Mm-hmm. Especially within households, within churches, because it doesn't just happen. And in our culture, it's not just happening.
Yeah.
So Gen Z, millennials, they're getting married at much lower rates, and they're delaying marriage for a much longer time.
And then on top of that, delaying children,
and then if
they have children at all.
That's right. And I think this is all wrapped up together. So if you're saying no to something, I like to think, and this will maybe help lead us into God's design. God's design is one that we can, to some extent, view with our eyes and experience and see. And the people who are opposed to abstinence education and opposed to instructing children to be chaste, they are aware of one thing keenly that sometimes perhaps even Christians forget, which is that there is a very powerful impulse toward procreation.
So, I love that you say this, because when we talk about in vitro fertilization in the schools,
Yeah.
So Right to Life stands against in vitro fertilization, just for clarification there. We talk about, why is it that people want children at all?
Mm-hmm.
Children are annoying and they're snot-nosed and they wake you up. And I'm getting no sleep these days, Pastor Barnett,
I believe
because
it.
my child is popping teeth through and has separation anxiety. Like, who wants that? And yet, so much of the world's population every single year has children.
Right.
More children, please. So yeah, there is this huge urge.
And even among people who aren't having children, there's this profound regret.
Yeah.
And when people are interviewed, oftentimes later in life, did you have as many children as you would wish that you could have had? Most people will say, I wish I had had more.
Yeah.
Which is, in view of all the lost sleep and all of the anxiety and everything that comes with it, is pretty amazing that people are still saying this after all of that. And moreover, right, just the desire, the unreflected desires, people aren't even thinking about it. I mean, they're sometimes having dreams. So I saw this thing on the internet. There's a million things on the internet, but evidently women are making TikToks about young women in their early 30s, are making TikToks about these dreams in which they had a child, and they wake up weeping.
Interesting.
And oftentimes these are women who have no intent or have kind of actually planned their life around not having children.
Mm-hmm.
And nevertheless, subconsciously they desire it.
Yeah.
And then the dream itself is so real that they wake up weeping for this child that they don't actually have.
Yeah.
And I think that displays that there's a lot happening at just this physiological, biological level that we are not always cognizant of. And that's happening with teenagers, right? I mean, they're being driven without cognizantly realizing what it is they want. But they're driven, and they're driven to each other. And it is so powerful that all the best poems and songs and plays by Shakespeare were written about this.
Yes.
Right? This is a theme.
Yeah. Romeo and Juliet.
Like
all teenagers.
Exactly. Half the rock songs, half the country songs, most of the poetry are about this.
Yeah.
So this is a huge driver in the human drama.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the opponents know this, and they just say that there's nothing you can do about it. Well, the world knew that it was powerful, and they knew that, in fact, harnessing that power was the very foundation of civilization. I mean, having children, procreating, and having functional marriages in which a child is raised up to the good and the useful and to the support and love of his neighbor is the very foundation upon which everything is built. And God set it up that way. So
I've been trying out this theory, Pastor Barnett, that children are the most important thing in the world. Like, there is nothing else. I mean, God, but like, there's nothing else more important in our world as we function as a society on a daily basis than children, because everything that we do is actually oriented towards the good of the next generation.
Right.
Like, why do politics matter? Why do economics matter? Why does schooling matter? None of it matters unless there's another generation coming.
That's right.
That's my theory I've been trying out.
No, I think that's right. And I think even the pagans understand this because they're constantly talking about their posterity.
Because which they don't have much of anymore.
Right. There's kind of two ways. Even if you don't believe in eternity, you still, the only way that you have a legacy, the only way that you continue is through children.
Right.
And through their memory of you and through the things that they learned and received from you. So even within the pagan world, there's been an understanding of this for millennia. Now we understand that our works do follow us in eternity, which actually adds even more weight to what we're doing. Our children. These aren't just people who carry our legacy. These are immortals. Right. These are eternal souls. Yeah, I think about that actually quite a bit. Like, I'm raising an eternal person right now. How do I want to handle this situation? Well, and that eternal person came into existence through a drive that God both commanded explicitly and has put in our biology when he said, go and be fruitful and multiply.
Right.
And that is something that he never abrogated or did away with. It is just probably the most fundamental reality, biological reality of our existence.
Yeah. So when you use the term chastity, I have a feeling that a lot of people, the first thing that they think about are those ridiculous chastity belts from 80s movies. Give us a functioning definition for that.
So chastity involves self-control. It's similar to temperance. So it's not entirely simply a matter of sexuality, but it's in view of that.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about being chaste before marriage and in marriage. Because if you want to have a successful marriage, and a marriage that is wholesome and that serves the good of your children and the good of your spouse and the good of your community, because marriage actually isn't a private affair. It belongs to everyone. It belongs to your children. It belongs to your community. It belongs to your church. Then you need to possess self-control. And the control of being able, when certain thoughts or desires or emotions come, to know that they're coming and to deal with them and to harness them and use them in certain ways.
Mm-hmm.
So chastity is not just about avoiding a specific act that results in children, but it has to do with how you shape your thoughts, what you turn your eyes toward or away from, and the habits that we build, the way that we interact with one another.
Yeah.
And kind of knowing the borders of these things and these interactions. And this takes a whole life. This must be modeled and imitated, has to be learned from parents. So because it's more than just a word, you could say to your child, don't do this, right? A lot of people think that instructing their children is maybe having the talk, as if it's a punctual thing. Like, a kid turns 14 and I don't know what to do. And now I have to tell them, and I told them, and now hopefully it doesn't happen. But it's a matter of the way you live your whole life, what you're modeling, what your children are imitating in you, the fact that they desire to imitate you, the fact that you've given them a positive vision of what marriage is, what their children can become, what their life can become, if in fact they are prudent and temperate and wise, and are keeping, in fact, their excess desires in check. And praying that God would fulfill in them the right desires, not eliminating their desire, but having chaste desires, good desires that are fulfilled in joy and pleasure in the context of a marriage where two people love each other and where the intimacy that they are getting from one another strengthens them as one flesh.
So that is all a lot harder to do than just once telling your kid, hey, don't have sex until you're married.
Yes. Yeah.
Which I wonder if that's why it's been dropped, because outside of the Redeemer environment, I think I can probably count on one hand the number of times the word chastity has been used in my life. Like it's been dropped as a term in the Christian church, I think. I don't hear anybody talk about it, Pastor Barnett.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. My only association with it growing up was from
chaste and decent life in word and deed, and each love and honor their spouse.
Yes. I mean, from the older translation of Luther's Moral Catechism, which is beautiful because it uses that word, right? Sexual immorality is just, okay. But chastity is a very good positive way of discussing this. But I don't know, I think that you mentioned these 80 movies. I think it's in Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Oh my gosh. What a great one.
Yeah, there's a chastity belt in that. Movies I should not have been allowed to watch as a teenager.
Add that one to the list.
Right. But no, I think that it is so foreign to us. And there are other ways to talk about it. We could talk about temperance, but this one is particularly in view of a particular good that God has designed us for, which is to be united in this relationship in marriage. And the fruit of the womb that comes from that marriage, which are always described as a blessing in Scripture.
Yeah.
Always exclusively described as blessings.
I think too, one of the earlier podcast episodes we did was about porn and Christians, and we had Sam Black on for that one. And we, one of the things that we run into, I think, a lot with young people in the Christian church is they justify pornography as a way to remain abstinent. They're like, see, I'm still practicing abstinence. This is just a way for me to let off steam. But chastity, if we talk about being chaste, then that weeds out that whole argument.
Right.
And I think young people know that that's not, like, I think they're pulling the wool over their own eyes. But if we talked in terms of chastity instead of just abstinence, I think that would do a lot for them in terms of like, no, you can't use that to dupe yourself over. Like, chastity doesn't make room for that.
Right. Because if to have all the goods that marriage entails, we must continue in chastity, then if you've habituated yourself to this thing that you call letting off steam, that's going to cause all sorts of problems within your marriage. It's going to cause all sorts of problems within your soul. It's going to disorient your soul because it's demonic. I mean, pornography is really the icon of the devil, in which he's inviting you into his world, and that then shapes, as it were, your mental furniture and shapes the way that all of that you're going to relate to yourself, to your sexuality, and to your wife. I mean, because the use is typically among young men, although it's also
bigger and bigger numbers.
Right.
Sam and I talked about that too. Yeah. So we could say the way you relate to your spouse.
Right. The way that you relate to your spouse. And I think we also need to tell people, look, this is the grave damage has been done, and this is a real poison. But one of the ways that the Lutheran confessions talk about marriage is they call it a remedy.
Okay,
so
talk about that.
A remedy, so a way of healing against the temptation toward fornication, which porneia, which would include also pornography, the writing of unchaste, or the drawing of unchaste images. We're talking about marriage as a remedy. So it heals. It's therapeutic. It's good for the body. It is good for the body that is made one. It actually strengthens the body. The marital embrace is actually a means of healing within the relationship. And I think that we could even talk about the way of dealing with even frustration and the sorts of things that come up when you have two sinners, which is what is always the case in a marriage, who are constantly in proximity toward one another and therefore constantly sinning against one another.
Right.
And to have to come together in the most intimate and physical way means that you're going to have to, ask each other for forgiveness. You're going to have to actually then find comfort in one another's embrace. And so being brought together continuously in the marriage is a way of strengthening the marriage and joining the two together ever tighter in one flesh. And then there's the sense in which you're one flesh in the production of children, because now they share your flesh.
Right.
Like you have the features of both parents in the child. Now your genetic material is joined forever in an immortal. I mean, there's an endlessness to this intimacy in which you've been brought into. There's an immortality to it. And if we knew the immortality of this, of what is produced through this gift of intimacy, I think we would consider chastity more seriously, because this endures forever. I mean, this is not just a one-night stand. It never is, because it's both eternal and immortal in terms of the creation of the soul, and it reorients the body physiologically.
Yeah.
Which I think we've only begun to discover how much actually happens in the act of intimacy. and how important our hormones are.
Yes.
And our body and our biology is to who we are, to how we think, to how we react. So I think that chastity in marriage and before marriage, all of this is part of God's design for us being wholly human, and virtuous in other regards, even able to deal with our emotions in different ways. I think that it's a remedy against acedia. So acedia being kind of sloth, the sort of sloth, and sloth can even exist in overwork and in over industriousness and like workaholism, because you're actually just avoiding real leisure.
Well, and you're avoiding home life.
Yeah.
So this is another, man, we're hitting all sorts of things today. This is another bone I have to pick with people. Like, don't tell me, I feel like this happens with men more. Don't tell me that you're going to go off and work your job and you're supporting your family through that and then come home and do nothing with your family. No. That doesn't work.
Right. It is a form of sloth.
Interesting.
And even overwork can be a form of sloth. And as it happens, I mean, this kind of depression and loneliness epidemic, I think, is the vice of sloth in many ways, right? People just kind of getting stuck in this way of thinking. And this is also related. There's a correlation, maybe not causation, certainly seems to me. Like if you have the right understanding of what it means to be human and what we were made for, then you can understand why this is going wrong or haywire. So if people are constantly depressed, and the same people that are constantly depressed are also the same people who've had a series of relationships, all of which culminated in intimacy, and then were broken off. In other words, the one fleshness was broken.
Right.
And then that's just being repeated over and over and over again. That's actually affecting you at a physiological level. You're becoming more and more vicious. That is more and more filled with vice. And then the desire, right? Because desire is actually a good thing. God made us to have desires. Right. Adam and Eve ate. So they were passionate even before sin. Passion is not necessarily bad, right? So they were passionate. But if we're desiring the wrong things consistently and coming up empty, it's weakening our passion. We no longer desire the good things. We no longer desire our family. And
I see more and more apathy in our culture. That makes a lot of sense there. I think also too, you mentioned one night stands, and that's kind of what you brought up right now is this, or maybe not one night stands, but like these broken off relationships. So we're going to be physically and emotionally intimate with each other, and then breaks off, and then the next one breaks off. And that bond is a real bond. And when you sever it, there's real trauma that happens because of that severance. But I think you can go even farther back and look at divorce rates. So you have children who are watching their parents break a relationship that's supposed to be concrete and just shatter it. And you have this person who you said is the immortal, like this is the one flesh and now they're breaking that. What does that do to that kid? And now that kid is moving forward in life saying, I never want to do that because it's so painful. And then that is changing how they relate to everybody else. Either they're putting up walls or they're overdoing it in their relationship in an attempt to draw a person in to a place where they can't ever leave them. Right? Don't ever leave me, the way that I saw my parents leave each other. And so you get it even from farther back and from a place where the kid couldn't do anything about it, but maybe still felt responsible for what happened too. I feel like that plays a huge role.
I think it does. And I've seen it play out in people's lives where people are afraid to marry for precisely that reason. I mean, because they have this trauma, and it's really quite sad because they're often depriving themselves of the remedy to their fear. Especially, and this could lead us down another lane, especially if they have found a good spouse, a good potential spouse, right? So I think this is the other part of the thing. If we reduce talking about chastity to abstinence or to just a handful of discussions about what you're not supposed to do, it leaves so many questions unanswered. It leaves so many habits unformed. And the real habits that we want to form, the way that we want to form our children, is to form them toward marriage and toward this thing that they've been made to be, and toward all the goods that they're going to receive from marriage. And that involves, training them in perceiving virtue in other people, which is like what Jane Austen novels are about, right? Because if it is true that, as the Bible indicates, women are more easily deceived, then they need instruction in how not to be deceived. Because men are very corrupt, sinful men are very willing
to deceive. Yeah, that's true.
And so that's part of, in fact, what we should be raising children up toward this goal. So if the goal is a chaste marriage in mind, and a woman and a man united in marriage, and all the goods that come from that, not just for themselves privately, but also for their whole community, right? For their church, all the stuff that's going to come out of that marriage, all the great benefits, then we need to be forming them toward marriage. And as much as we can, it is really kind of a very mysterious thing to me how, it is really God's providence when a man finds a wife, right? He's found a lovely thing, a beautiful thing. And it is really God that's ultimately and his providence behind this. But he works through means, and he works through us to develop the right habits and to guide our children toward marriage. And so if we know that the drive that is built upon God's command and human biology is a rushing river, right? We have to have a plan for what we're going to do if we're going to stick a dam at the other end. There needs to be space for the reservoir. And there's going to be probably a point at which, if we know our own children well, that reservoir might get filled up.
Yeah.
So then we've got to figure out a way to harness that river to as it were, turn it somewhere else, and then let it ultimately, it needs to flow. So I think this is one of the beautiful benefits of the Lutheran confessions, and is that they understand that this cannot be changed, and because it cannot be changed, I tend to take Luther's position. Being celibate is a rare gift. It's a rare gift. And if we really believe that it's very rare, then, and we're asking our children not to do something, we've got to try to help to figure out a way that they could, in the right way, do that thing, right? Build a family, experience pleasure, procreate. That's a lot harder than having a one talk. Because it involves things that I don't think that we're very good at anymore, that previous generations were in some ways better at. Like, for example, vetting potential mates.
The whole courtship
thing. That's another topic. And I hope you could have someone on here to talk about courtship, because that's a real parental responsibility. And I think we're kind of a couple generations away from that. So we've got to rediscover it. So what I'm doing personally is trying to be in a community with a lot of people that are the same age as my own children. I know I'm not going to tell them, my son's name is John. John, you have to marry her, right? But sometimes we jokingly ask, like, well, what about, would you marry so-and-so? Would you marry so-and-so? And we put the idea in their minds. And we spend time with these other children's parents. And I'm fortunate to have a huge network because I'm a Missouri Synod pastor. So I know guys are in Iowa. I know guys are in Wisconsin.
All over the place.
And I'm very concerned with trying to meet up with them every few summers and get our kids together and see if, by the time they're 16, 17, 18, if there's some sparks.
Yeah. Is there any catch? So this is, okay. I love this because for a couple of reasons. First of all, how much time and energy do we put into our children's schooling in order to prepare them for a career?
Right.
And a career can be changed.
Right.
Versus how much time do we put into helping them find a spouse or become the person who would be a good spouse.
Right.
Like, when we talk about suffering with high school kids, I love asking them, who would you rather date? Somebody who's been through a lot of suffering and has learned how to care for people who are suffering, or someone who's never had to do any of that? Well, they all are going to pick the person who's learned how to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
And yet they all want to be the person who hasn't dealt with it at all.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I've never been asked to do anything hard. That's who they want to be. So that's an interesting thing, right? We have to actually work on this with our kids. But we have shifted as a culture all of our time and energy into career prep and basically no time or energy as an overall culture into like spousal prep. Like, let's help you find the person that you're going to be with for the rest of your life and create a family with. That seems like it's of so much more importance than a career.
Yes, it is. I mean, they are kind of bound up to some extent. And this is yet another topic. I mean, historically, men were breadwinners. Mm-hmm. Historically, men needed to have a livelihood to marry,
right?
Because there is this real demand and expectation from the father of the bride that the man to whom he is giving his daughter, to whom the whole family is giving their daughter, that he is able to provide for her children. And there's a real bond that's being made between these families.
And this is very Genesis.
Yeah.
Right? Like Adam is the guard. He's going to tend the garden. He's going to take care of Eve. He's the provider. He's supposed to be for Eve what God is for creation.
Right.
The support and caretaker.
That is different than being career-minded or ready. And I think that we have confused this idea of preparing someone for a specific career with making them competent. Because that competence, if that competence is broad in terms of their ability to think and reason, if they've read widely and deeply, if they have a large imagination, if they've spent time as a man working with their hands.
Yes. Shop classes. Can we please bring shop classes back? Thank you.
Right. If you're competent in doing all sorts of things, then you will. And if you trust in the Lord's providence, then you can be confident that He's going to provide for you. And to some extent, I think people in previous ages have also realized that there's a sense in which you're trusting in the Lord's providence, but you're also looking for a young man's potential. Mm-hmm. And I think the career expectation and the expectations that we, a very wealthy society, have for financial stability have actually put a huge barrier in the way of people getting married. So we're telling people to be abstinent, and then we're telling them that they have to have a household income of $250,000 a year to afford children. And then we're telling them that their houses, they can't afford houses anymore. Right. So we're telling them they have to do all of these things.
I'm going to add in one more thing.
Yeah.
We're putting them in university settings where it's a constant, huge sleepover, and then telling them not to purple. Pink on pink floors, blue on blue floors, and don't mix them.
Right.
Yeah, that's going to work.
Right. There's so much to say here, Abby, because, so we have coeducation is a pretty new experiment. And when we did it, when we first started doing it, we were putting the dorms on opposite ends of the campus,
which is wise.
And we had people holding, watch. And that is, in most places, that has totally
I don't know anybody who has like beef eaters standing watch anymore.
Yeah, no, I mean,
they could use them.
They could.
Absolutely. I feel like that would actually really help.
Right. So at Concordia Ann Arbor, they used to have like a bridge. So you had to cross a bridge.
Perfect.
So you could put a man on the bridge.
That's perfect.
And he wouldn't let them after a certain hour,
Yeah.
Cross
even
over
before a certain hour. Like, why do you need to be hanging out in each other's bedrooms? Stop.
Absolutely. Right. So, just education away from home. There's just a ton of liabilities there in the first place. So, I think that we need to begin to think about our own children, their capabilities, instead of just being defeatist and saying this is going to happen.
Sure.
We should know our own children. We should know what they're capable of. We should know what sort of temptations we're placing them in the midst of. And I don't think that we have to assume that they need a piece of paper that says BA on it to be happy. Mm-hmm. They may or may not need a specific credential for a specific skill set, right? But if their goal is to be husband and wife, then they need to be saying what sort of work in the home and outside of the home, what sort of productive work supports that. Mm-hmm. And that's going to reorient all sorts of things, because then your purpose in life is not your career. Your purpose is in the thing that you give to everyone, to your community, to your family, to one another, and the greatest gift being the gift that God gives in children and in raising them up. So if that's your orientation, then work, although it has its meaning in itself, right? I mean, working in the garden is a real good thing.
Which is why we all love to garden.
Right. Some people love to garden. I'm not sanctified enough yet that I love love gardening. There. I'll get there. It just doesn't work out for me so well. I'm not good at it.
You can learn.
I'm learning. I'm trying. Yeah. I just learned this year that I can plant cucumbers directly. So I was trying to start all of these things, and then I'm transplanting them and they're dying.
Yeah, I don't do a good job transplanting either. I'm with you on that.
But gardening is good because it requires a ton of patience.
And it's work, and it creates something, right? You're taking God's paintbrush and continuing the painting.
Right.
It's just good. And it gives you something this is what I really love about it too. You talk about community, and families build communities, and gardening builds communities, because when somebody comes over to my house and my garden is going, I always have something to give them. Oh. You don't leave my house empty-handed. You have a bundle of flowers that my children picked out of their own gardens, because they're not allowed to pick flowers out of my garden, Pastor Barnett. They got to pick flowers out of their own gardens. Or cucumbers, or a thing of green beans, or some tomatoes in a cup, it's a hospitality thing. And I just think it's such a wonderful way. You talk about families being fruitful. I think it's an offshoot of that fruitfulness of families. Like, here's my garden and I have something to give you out of it.
Absolutely. Right. So the family used to be the major unit of production. So much so that we view the career as freedom, and we try to sell it to everyone as freedom. If you work 40 hours a week and you have your own bank account, you're free.
Yeah.
No one in the 1700s in England thought that was true. No one thought it was freedom when the man had to work 60 hours a week outside of the home with a 2-hour commute on the train ride.
Yeah.
He thought it was freedom when he could be at home shearing his sheep and showing his son, giving him a real tangible skill with which he could in the future help and form a family.
Yeah.
And he's spending time with his family. The work and the family were not separate.
And work comes into temperance too, I think, right? So you talk about the reservoir and the dam, this idea of like, okay, we've got kids whose hormones are, man, they got to drive, which also I think should tell us as a society that we're pushing marriage off too far.
I think so.
Like, why do we have a huge hormone surge here? And then we're saying, oh, well, you have to go to college first, and you have to get a job first, and then you have to be established, and then you can get married. What? Okay. But hard work uses up some of that energy.
Yes.
And so when you have young men doing hard work with their dads, and their dads are slapping them around a little bit here and there, right? Take the chip off their shoulder. I think that that's a big piece of what we're missing in America.
Right. And that's the thing that builds the confidence that actually is attractive in a man that the whole kind of pickup artist community is trying to imitate. So I don't know if you're familiar with all this stuff, but so there's a whole, this is, young men are trying to figure out how to get married. I think they're trying to at least figure out how to have the benefits of marriage, right? We talked about how they have this drive, and some of them, if they are not virtuous, are very willing to deceive.
Yeah.
And that deception, they figured out they have to have confidence, and confidence comes through having done things
Mm-hmm.
and done them well,
Mm-hmm.
and then receive the approval of other people, specifically other men.
Mm-hmm.
You did a good job. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a real product, something that you really created that is contributing to me, to other people. There's real fruits of your labor.
Yeah.
So that confidence is born of actual labor. And the labor is coming partly out of that drive to have a family. Well, there's not a lot of labor happening with young men. There's a lot of looking at screens. There's a lot of, there's not much in the way of labor.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there's very little in the way of productivity. So I think that there's a real desire in young people to produce the thing that is attractive without the thing behind it. And to do that, well, you have to become a confidence man, a con man. So you're faking confidence. And,
Interesting.
And then and that's part of the deception. And that's what, raising virtuous and chaste children helps them do. It helps the young men become productive and therefore actually confident. And it helps the young women recognize true confidence from the counterfeit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it also says, look, there is kind of this, we want to harness this energy while it's kind of building, right?
Yeah.
And these, before you hit 40, certainly, probably in your early 20s, right? Some people would suggest even before then.
I have a 4-year-old.
Yeah.
And I'm like, your muscles are for helping people. So today he was going to help one of our staff members carry something in from the car. And I was like, are you going to use your muscles to help people? And he's like, yeah. And he does this. Actually, he does it like this. Oh, show your muscles. Yeah, because harness it, man.
Yeah,
5 years old.
Absolutely.
Harness that.
Encourage him to keep being strong, right? And to use his strength for productivity. It is challenging because some of what we're thinking about is that I think a lot of us are at a loss for what are our children going to do, right? How are they going to build families? How are they going to be economically viable? And we don't have control over everything in the economy. We don't know how things are going to turn out. We don't know how many jobs AI is going to decimate and so on and so forth. But we can make our children virtuous, and we can, within where we can produce gardens, wherever we can encourage productivity, we're encouraging marriage, I think, in our children. And I want to go back to gardening because I do think, I this idea that it is productive, and production, right, actually serves the neighbor and therefore produces community, because you're not going to Kroger and talking to someone you'll never talk to again, but you're actually talking to your actual neighbor. And so here's something else that I think that gardening can teach us about children, is that you plant the seed and then the thing grows up, and it has some branches here and some branches here, and some of its fruit are this size and some of its fruit are that size. And you could, to some extent, control it, right? You needed to put a stake for your tomato plants or a cage for them to grow up into, so that they could hang their leaves, right? You have some control, but you don't have control about what was in that seed. So that's the reality of and also the joy, because you get to see this. These are great tomatoes. Like, this seed grew really strong and had these huge boughs. And you can also see that God is in far more control of how it is that your family turns out than you are.
Yeah.
And you are rather the gardener. You're the steward. You're getting rid of the weeds. You're making sure that you prep the soil, that you're adding to the soil, but you cannot actually change the very nature. You can't change your nature. Right. You can't change your child's nature, which includes its drive toward marriage. You can't change the nature. All you can do is work with the nature and encourage the nature. Mm-hmm. I wish I had some sort of 5-step goal.
Right. Back to these conversations. Because, we've hit on it a couple of times. And I think it's maybe a key point, is this idea of like, if abstinence is the goal and it has become it, then these one and done conversations, right? And I think parents have lost the art of having the talk with their kids because it's been reduced down. We have a reductionist view of what this is supposed to be. But I think there is a resurgence of the goal being that you have, and if you look at the Christian organizations who are fighting porn addictions, who are driving for virtue in the families, they all say the same thing, which is, this is not one conversation. This is not 3 conversations. This is not one conversation each year. This is a constant. Part of growing up is learning these things. And so as I raise my kids, it was something I keep in mind all the time. And actually my goal has become to take every opportunity that they give me to explain to them more about their sexuality and their body and relationships and that kind of thing, keeping it all age appropriate. But if I take every opportunity to keep building on those things with them, then a couple of things happen. One is I know I haven't lost any opportunities. So there's no regret there, or like, did I miss something that I should have put out there?
Yeah.
2, it's not awkward. Kids aren't awkward about this stuff. 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds, they're not awkward about this stuff. It's very matter of fact. And if it's not awkward then it's not going to be awkward when they're 16, 17, 18. And it's not going to be awkward when they're 20, 21, 22. And one of my major goals, Pastor Barnett, with my kids is that they come to me instead of going to the internet. Because I grew up in a generation of people who just went to the internet for answers. They hear friends talking in class and they're embarrassed to ask, and they don't have a bridge built with their parents because their parents didn't build a bridge. It's not the kid's job to build the bridge. It's the parents' job. And their parents didn't build a bridge. And so instead of asking their parents what this term means, what that word meant, what that slang is, they Google it.
Yeah, I think I would like to talk to more families. I mean, we have them at Redeemer. So I think there's so many things involved in this and how to do this right. And I think the biggest piece is probably community. And that's a hard thing to find. We have that. And that's a huge boon to us. We have a lot of other families with older children that display this. I'm thinking about one family in particular where if you're at your house, they're all interacting. They're all teenagers now, but they want to be home. They do respect their parents, and they go to their dad for real answers about things. And they live together. They don't go to the internet for answers, in part because they don't even really have the internet.
I love.
They have it. They have a computer that they can all use in their living room. I mean, this notion is that their lives are a life together. Of course, they have things that are their own. They have their own emotions and feelings. They have a place to go to fall asleep at night. But this notion that I really don't think that you have a private life in a family.
Yeah, we have way overdone the idea of privacy. Way overdone it. And kids don't grow up wanting privacy. I got little kids. You got little kids.
Yep.
Where do they want to be?
They want to be in the living room.
They want to be in the living room, and they all want to be in my bed at night.
Yeah.
They don't want to be by themselves.
Yep. And they follow, and my children follow their mother around. They're like playing and they, like I'm stepping on toys in the kitchen.
Yes. Yes.
So
kicking them out of the way.
They want the warmth of the hearth, hearth, which in Latin, the word is focus. So it's like the focus. It's the place where we're all gathering around the warmth, where the food comes from.
Yeah.
And
in Spanish, it's the soul of the house.
The soul of the house. So why would you want to be in the dark, cold corners where there's no food? You want to be in the warmth. Yeah, I think we value privacy far too much, and we assume that we have to give it to our kids. No, we're all hanging out in the living room. This is what we do. We do this until it's time to go to bed, and then we do devotions.
Well, and you look at, and then even then the kids want to sleep all together, piled up on each other. You look at, like you mentioned, depression earlier. Isolation is one of the biggest factors in that. And yet we're giving every kid their own room. Why? They don't want their own rooms. And then we teach them to want their own rooms, and then they want their own space, and then they feel isolated. Like, Well, great. And then they go to college, they have to share dorm rooms anyways, and they're horrible dorm mates because they've had their own room their whole lives. Okay. So why are we doing this as a culture? Why does everybody get their own room? Why do they have so much privacy when maybe that's a challenge, listeners, comments. Find me one time where this is actually helpful.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that most people live this way for most of human history. We didn't even have the space to live this way. We just lived all together.
A lot of countries still don't.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds miserable to me, but a lot of people used to sleep with their children in one bed, all wrapped up together.
Yeah.
I kind of like being able to sleep at night. I like getting some shut eye.
You learn how to sleep at night.
I'm sure you do
when you have a family bed.
I like some things about modernity. I don't know how willing I am to change personally, but I do think that the families I've seen that are successful in this are families that are being family together. They have dinner at the dinner table every evening. And they're not asking like, how was your day? They're asking they're really interested in each other. So they're asking specific questions, and they've all learned to be good conversationalists with one another. And they belong to communities that value the same things and then reinforce those values. And they have a real positive vision that's involved in that community because there's other people in that community that they could actually imagine as their spouses. They might not marry in that community, but they could imagine it. Mm-hmm. So
we're in that phase right now at home.
Yeah.
We're imagining people being our spouses.
It's good. I think
mostly we've moved outside of our family. I have one child who still thinks he's going to marry inside the family, and the oldest is working on correcting that.
Yeah, well,
but the oldest, man, she's got budding romances.
I believe it. I still have a keen memory of the girl that I married when I was 5 years old.
Yeah,
because I thought it was real. You know, but planning marriage is important, right? Encourage this to a certain extent, right? They should be imagining what it's like to grow up. Mm-hmm. They should be playing grow up. They should be playing house. All of these things are good in children.
At Redeemer, we have children who love to tote babies around. Yeah. My baby doesn't stay in my arms for very long when I walk into the Redeemer atmosphere.
I believe you. It's a culture of people valuing other people with babies. And if you can find this, join it, get involved, belong to it. It will be because I think your children need to see it in more than just you. They need to see it all around. It really strengthens them. We were friends with a family that was here for a year at seminary, because we take it all for granted, and they're going to they're going to Norway. It's complicated. The wife is from Norway. The man was from Wales, and he's going to be a pastor in Norway. Okay. And Norway is hyper secularized now. There's just not a lot of Christians. So in many ways, there's a small congregation there. There's not a lot of children. And so they were always thanking us for just the opportunity for their children to see other people living as Christians. And it's just amazing how much I take that for granted. But if you have it, don't take it for granted, because you need these people to help develop a positive vision of an imagination of where they're going. I think that's the number one thing I would say. Cultivate in your children a real sense of their future as husband and wife. Like, they should be imagining spouses. They should be imagining some of their peers as spouses. Might not turn out.
And I think, so as you said that just now, I had this little miniature red flag go up, and I was like, well, why is this ringing weirdly to me? And I think that for a while now, we've thought, well, if we're going to avoid premarital sex, and we're going to avoid these romances that lead to it, and we're going to avoid all this stuff, then we should just pretend like none of it exists. So oh, you like a boy at school? We're not going to do that. You can't date until you're 16. Stop doing that over there. And you're saying the opposite. Yeah. And I think that makes sense, because you're not going to successfully squash all that. What you're going to do is make it look like, oh, I can't talk to mom about this boy I like because I'm not supposed to like him. So now, instead of asking mom my questions and telling her about my dreams and what I'm thinking, and, oh, he saved a spot for me at lunch today, I'm going to talk to somebody about it who does accept that, which is probably my friends. And I think maybe that's part of why we have so much trouble and why there's been so much trouble is that parents have essentially become the last person that I'm going to talk to about any of my relationship stuff, because according to them, I shouldn't have any of it.
Maybe that's part of the expectation. I think part of it is also, the expectation I hope to cultivate in my household is that my blessing is being sought.
Mm-hmm.
And so if, my daughter is interested in Johnny or somebody, Peter at age 13 or 14, why don't we have Peter and his family over for dinner and then keep having them over for dinner and see how you interact? And it becomes a bit bigger of a deal when they are 16. And, what do you, I really think we got to start pushing back against the dating thing, because it's, what do you mean date? You guys can hang out with us in the family, because you're going to be doing this. If you actually do get married,
right?
This is what we're going to be doing.
Right.
My expectation is if you're living in Fort Wayne, we're having, and I would love that. And I'm trying to aim for that because I want to keep my children around me. And that's an explicit aim in my household. I want my children to live close to me. So I would like them to marry someone who's looking for a job in Fort Wayne. And I want them to be over on Sunday evenings and afternoons for meals.
Yeah, we all go to church together, and then we come home and we have a family meal, and then we spend the day on the lawn and whatever, gardening.
Right.
And then we have dinner together out of our garden.
Exactly. And how do we get there? Because we spend a lot of time together, right? And yeah, sure, you guys want to go out in the car and go get some ice cream together. I might even say, take your sibling along. Right.
Which the younger siblings love.
Yeah.
From my experience, little siblings love being taken on dates with the older siblings because they admire the boyfriend.
Right.
Or the girlfriend.
I want the younger sibling to admire, I've got boy, girl, boy, right? I want the youngest boy to admire the middle girl's boyfriends. I want that. Mm-hmm. I want them to be like them. I want the sort of man that my daughter's marrying to model manliness also for my youngest
because
children.
They become another brother.
Right. Exactly.
Right. Yeah, you're grafted in.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I think, and that's kind of the traditional view of marriage and family. And I don't know entirely how we got away from that or even found that abhorrent or strange, right? Maybe sitcoms had a lot to do with it, right? Like everyone's supposed to dislike their in-laws. And I think it's
tragic.
That is tragic. That's deeply unfortunate.
It's tragic. Yeah. The privacy thing. That's no good.
Yeah. So I think cultivate a real vision of husband and wife for your children. Encourage them to be chaste and virtuous in their life now so that they'll be chaste and virtuous in their marriage later. And let them know that the purpose of this is pleasure as well as the procreation of children. And as you said, these two things belong together.
Yeah. So we didn't talk about this yet. We mentioned it before we started recording, but we didn't talk about that when God designed intimacy, there's two pieces there that it's procreation. It creates babies. Like this is what the reproductive system creates babies. We do this with high school students, right? Your lungs are for breathing. It's a respiratory system. Your digestive system digests food. Your reproductive system makes babies. So if you don't want to make babies, don't use your reproductive system yet. But it's also for bonding, right? Some people, no matter what they do, they never have children. Does that mean that's it? That's the end of it. There's nothing coming of that procreative system. Well, no, they still have the bonding piece. And like you talked about, some of that relationship stuff that happens when you do have that intimacy. But I think that's another thing. Our world has separated these two things, babies and bonding, and they want one without the other.
Right.
And so on the one hand, we've got widespread contraceptives and abortion and one night stands and all sorts of things. And on the other hand, we have in vitro fertilization and surrogacy. And all of those things come from trying to separate these two things from each other, babies and bonding.
Right. Yeah. And biologically, they're connected. So why would we think that we could reorient our biology and without negative consequences? I mean, I think that's just the first thing that should be obvious.
And then, Americans are in the business of separating cause and effect.
Yep. Yeah. If we could have all the pluses without any of the work, why not?
Because it makes you a terrible person. That's why.
Right. Because it's actually, it's all about design. This is how we're made to work. And then part of the bonding is the wonderful expectation that the Lord might bring something out of this that is going to require a lot of work, one for the other. So there's so much trust in the potentiality of having children, because this is going to change our lives, right? We're going to lose a lot of our self-care time, and you're going to need me more, and there's going to be real challenges to this, and once again, more need for forgiveness, right? There's going to be more need for Christ in the midst of. There's always a need for Christ, but the reality is that by being dependent upon God to provide not just for ourselves, but for someone else, our trust is increased. So much so that that Paul says in 1 Timothy that women will be saved through childbearing.
Because it brings us to an end of ourselves.
I think that's involved in it. I think that this is describing the normal means of sanctification for women.
Yeah.
Not the exclusive means,
right?
But the normal one where the Lord opens the womb. That is, he requires faith. He exercises our faith. So the man's faith should be exercised in productivity, right? Which is partly related to his curse, right? That he works by the sweat of his brow.
Yeah.
And so he says he puts the seed in the soil and he says, is anything going to come of all this work? And to actually know that something's going to come of it, he has to trust in the Lord. He trusts in the Lord to reward his labor. He doesn't make the fruit. God makes the fruit come out.
Yeah.
And likewise.
Now we just get crop insurance.
Yep. So, yep, exactly. So we don't trust in anything. We're hedging all of our bets.
Yes.
We're always hedging all of our bets. And so the same with children and the same with childbearing is that the woman is going to absolutely need the help of the Lord to sustain her physically, her life, because she could die in childbearing.
Yeah.
And then all the way through. So it's not just the moment of childbearing, but it's actually giving life, knowing what it is to sacrifice for this other human being and raise this other person up is far beyond her actual capabilities as they exist when she's pregnant.
I'm in it right now. Not the pregnancy part, but everything else.
So the Lord actually has to form her and sanctify her. And he does that. He promises to do that. And faith trusts that the Lord will fulfill his promises.
Yeah.
So this is it's not the means of salvation. The means of salvation is our Lord's atoning death on the cross. But it is the arena in which he has us practice faith. Mm-hmm. And so this is it actually changes who we are. We die to ourselves. We take up our cross and follow Jesus in our labor, in our productivity, and in our raising up of children and our childbearing. And that to be involved in an act that will require you to bear a cross. That bonds people. Mm-hmm. To suffer together. Mm-hmm. Bonds people. So it's really the potentiality of having the child. Otherwise, you turn into, even if the Lord closes the womb in his majestic wisdom, you're still, there's always that potentiality. The Lord can open the womb miraculously.
Right. And does.
And he does. And you're living in that trust. And that is part of the physiological act of bonding you is living in that trust together. And so I think you're spot on. These two things belong together. Otherwise, you turn into, this is another internet phenomenon, the dual income, no mm-hmm. kids. And then the other person becomes the means for your own personal happiness and fulfillment, which is pretty cheap, right?
And then I read one time, it said, and I say this at the risk of making people mad, right? Like people who are married can be plenty selfish, whether they have children or not children, but children do tend to drive things out of us. But this author, and I forget who it was, said, when you get married and decide to have no children, there's the very distinct potential, and it happens often, that a selfish me becomes a selfish us, because it's two adults catering to themselves to a certain extent and to each other to a certain extent. But children do have this way of breaking all that apart.
Right.
And everything hits the fan, and nothing is the way I want it anymore.
Yep. Yeah. All the stuff that you loved, or that you worshipped, all your idols are destroyed.
Yes.
My car has scratches on it.
Right. It's filthy.
All of my furniture has been destroyed. We're not going to buy any new furniture until the kids are grown.
Nice things.
Yeah, exactly. And that's good. My idols have been destroyed.
Yeah, including sleep.
Yep.
And anything else I wanted. Yeah. Okay. I have something to put by you.
Okay.
Okay. This is playing in. I think it attaches to some of the things we were just talking about. I learned that women are most attractive to men when they are in the area of their cycle where they're fertile. And women are most interested in physical intimacy when they are fertile. So, we talked about college and these dorm situations and how it's a bad idea. And then add on top of it that these hormones, right, are making women, so young women who are committed to chastity, right? I'm going to save sex for marriage because that's where it belongs and there's good reasons for it. And this is how God designed us, are most likely to break that when they are also most likely to conceive a baby. Also, that women are more vulnerable because of hormonal stuff. Women are more vulnerable in the dark. So after the sun sets, the old saying, nothing good happens after midnight?
Yes. Yeah.
After the sun sets, women are more vulnerable than when the sun is up. So design and science, right? God created the world and it speaks his truth. And I feel like this is such a cool example of that.
It is. I mean, if the Lord really wants us to have children, we shouldn't be surprised that he's designed it all to happen that way.
And now, you would talk about modern phenomenons. Pheromone perfumes. Have you heard of these?
I haven't. No.
Okay, there's really interesting ads on Pinterest, right? These women, they put on this pheromones, right? Okay, so men are intercepting women's pheromones and they're like, ooh, okay. And so they made perfumes that have pheromones in them. So it makes men more attracted to women because they are putting off pheromones as if they were fertile. But a huge amount of women in the United States are not fertile because they're contracepting. So they're not normally putting off the pheromones. So now they're faking the fertility aspect because they actually aren't. And then men unwittingly are responding to this. Isn't that fascinating?
We are animals. We're rational animals, but we're animals.
But again, back to the breaking the cause and the effect apart. And now we're reaching over to fake the thing that we've lost. And they did these tests with pheromones too, where they have pictures of just everyday, ordinary women. And they have men say, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how attractive do you think this woman is? Whatever. And they show the same pictures again, but they put pheromones in the air conditioning in this room full of men, and all of the scores went up.
Really?
Right. So this is the science. This is the chemistry of it. I just think it's so fascinating that we're so interested in science as a culture, so interested in chemistry as a culture, and then completely willing to ignore all of the natural consequences that come from it.
Well, let's take this back to abstinence. So, we'll maybe
circle back,
which is that if this is happening at a subconscious level, if this is that powerful, then we're maybe tricking ourselves if we think that communicating information, like telling someone don't do this, is enough to stop it.
It's definitely not.
So we really have to plan our lives, right? Like if you putting a woman and a man together. So Luther is constantly talking about these priests, for example, who have this is a common phenomenon in the Middle Ages. You have these priests who have a housemaid.
Oh,
and she's young, and then suddenly the priest, 12 months after he hires this housemaid, is baptizing her illegitimate child. And he's the one paying the dispensation because you used to have to pay a dispensation to have an illegitimate child baptized. So this is kind of a known phenomenon in the Middle Ages, right? Because you have, and he says, look, when you're putting fire and tinder together,
right?
A spark and tinder, you're going to get a fire,
right?
This is just the natural way that things go, and this is another topic, but with this kind of cohabitation, so in our church we take this very seriously, and we want people to repent of fornicating before they are married, and where we discover this.
If you're living together, you're going to stop living together until you're married.
Exactly. So there's always this talk of like, well, we can just be roommates. No, this is not just a thought. This is not, you don't just have a policy that you adopt.
Yeah.
This isn't a law, I
wrote a contract that says we're just roommates now, and so it's going to work. Exactly.
As if we're not embodied with actual things happening at the level of hormones. And to be faithful Christians and to raise up children who are chaste, we have to take these physiological, biological realities into consideration.
Yeah. All right. Maybe one last thing here, Pastor Barnett, because we have generations now of people who have lived together, who have engaged in premarital sex, and now they're having children. And this has been said to me before, which is why I bring it up. This idea of the kids now saying, well, mom, well, dad, you can't say anything to me about this because you did it. And I think, now, wait a minute. Parents who have lived this and know the consequences of it are exactly who should be talking to their children about it, because they've been through the consequences of it. Right? So I can tell you that this doesn't turn out nearly as well as following God's design. And I know that because I've been through it. So I am exactly the person who should speak to this. And I wish that more parents said that, but I think instead they're allowing shame to cripple them. And the devil says, shh, shut up and stay in the corner because you did it wrong. You don't have any room to talk. And teenagers who want to think that they're know the most in the whole entire universe are sort of echoing that. Don't tell me what to do. You messed this up. You can't preach to me. And so maybe a little call to action here that if you did something wrong, and I have done something, I have plenty of things wrong, right? Let's seek God's forgiveness and his reconciliation, and then go ahead and educate our children about look, God's design is God's design for a reason. It makes sense and things work best when we follow it. And I can tell you that personally because I've done things according to and not according to, and I can tell you which one works better.
Right.
But the devil telling us to sit down and shut up because we sinned 20 years ago is just not how Christians ought to live in that shadow.
I think so. There's in logic we call this a tu quoque fallacy. You too, right? So the kid takes the thing out of the cookie jar, and the sibling says, "Mom said not to do that," and he says, "Well, you did it yesterday, right?" Well, that doesn't invalidate the truth of the statement,
right?
But it does. It is weakened. Its value is weakened because when we lose our ethos, our credibility, and so it would be better. I think it would be better if we said, "This is the right thing to do, and I lived it, and I'm proof." But there is likewise a credibility that comes from saying, yeah, I also did the wrong thing and I lived its consequences. Mm-hmm. I think actually a positive example is always stronger. And a positive vision is always stronger than a negative example. But even a negative example, it can be a strong warning. And we have an obligation to the truth. Mm-hmm. However we've come to it. Would that we all came to it through other people's mistakes. Right?
But that generally doesn't happen.
So most of us have to make some mistakes on our own, hopefully not the big ones, but most of us have to make some mistakes on our own to learn and to wise up. And I think it's incumbent upon us to say the truth and to live for the truth, because that's what we're going to have to answer before God and we can't listen to the devil's accusations. You have an office, regardless of whether you've lived in a way that was sinful or not. If you are a parent, you have an office, and therefore you are accountable before God for placing the truth before your children. You're going to have to answer before the throne of God on the last day about how you raised your children. So don't listen to the lies of the devil, who would tell you that you can't do that or that you're disqualified because of your own sin.
Yeah, disqualified is a great word for that.
If God made you a parent, you are qualified. If God gave you the office, you are qualified to do the work of the office.
Let's stop there.
Yeah.
That's great.
Okay.
I love that.
All right. Good. All right.
Mic drop. And in all seriousness, thank you for being on with us. I love the discussion.
That was good.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it so much. And thanks for being with us too. This has been The Pro-Life Perspective. I'm Abigail Lorenzen. We'll catch you guys next time.